Imagine waking up in the morning and the first thing you notice is not the light through the window. It is not the warmth of the blanket. It is not the sound of someone breathing beside you. The first thing you notice is a calculation. Who is going to want something from you today? Who owes you something? Who might become a problem? Who might become useful? Which allies need maintenance? Which enemies need monitoring? Which conversations from yesterday require follow-up moves today? This is not paranoia. It does not feel like paranoia to you. It feels like reality. Because in your experience of the world, this is simply how conscious human beings function. Everyone is playing a game. Some people just play it better than others. You have never known any other way to be alive. By the end of this video, you will step, for a few minutes, inside a mind you may have spent your entire life trying to avoid. Not to sympathize with it, not to excuse it, but to understand it from the inside. Because there is a specific insight you can only gain from this perspective, and it will change how you protect yourself, how you interpret behavior, and how you understand the humans around you for the rest of your life. Let me take you in. The first thing you need to understand about being inside this kind of mind is that it does not feel wrong. This is one of the most misunderstood aspects of Dark Triad psychology. Outsiders assume that these individuals must know they are different, must feel a persistent, gnawing awareness that their inner life is missing something everyone else has. The truth is stranger. They feel entirely normal to themselves. Their inner world is not experienced as an absence. It is experienced as the default. They assume at a deep intuitive level that everyone else is like them, merely better or worse at hiding it. They believe that talk of empathy, of unconditional love, of moral conscience is largely performance, a social currency people trade in for advantage, a polite fiction the naive have been convinced to believe. When they see someone act with what appears to be genuine kindness, they do not experience awe. They experience skepticism. They wonder what the kind person is really getting out of the situation, what angle they are working, what long game they are playing. Because in their internal world, no one does anything without a return. The idea that a stranger might help another stranger simply because they felt sorry for them, the idea that a parent might sacrifice for a child simply out of love, these ideas register in the Dark Triad mind as either cover stories or biological reflexes. Real motive, they believe, is always self-interest. Everyone is transactional. Everyone is a player. Some players are just better at pretending they are not. This is why they do not feel guilt about their manipulations. In their internal model of the world, they are not deceiving anyone. They are simply playing the game more skillfully than the people around them. And if those people are foolish enough to believe the performances, well, that is a failure of intelligence on the target's part, not a moral failure on the manipulators. You cannot cheat someone at a game they did not know they were playing, according to this internal logic. If they lost, it is because they were not paying attention. This worldview is not a rationalization built after the fact. It is the primary lens through which they see reality, which means their conscience does not activate the way yours does. Not because it is broken, because the situations that would activate your conscience do not register in their internal world as morally relevant events. They register as strategic moves. There is no internal alarm, because there is no perceived violation. The second thing you need to understand is that they experience emotions. They just experience them differently. This is another myth that outsiders often carry. The idea that Dark Triad personalities are emotionally hollow, that they walk through their days feeling nothing, that their inner life is a vast, cold silence. This is not accurate. They feel plenty. They feel triumph when a strategy works. They feel irritation when they are contradicted. They feel amusement when a target reacts predictably. They feel contempt when someone shows what they perceive as weakness. They feel excitement when a new challenge presents itself. What they largely do not feel, or feel only faintly, or feel only in specific circumstances are the empathy-linked emotions. They do not feel the automatic chest tightening when they witness distress in others. They do not feel the reflexive shame when they realize they have caused harm. They do not feel the aching pull to comfort a suffering friend. They do not feel the guilt that lingers after a betrayal. These specific emotional currents, which most humans take for granted as the background music of their inner lives, are simply quieter for them, sometimes almost silent. But this does not mean they are unfeeling. It means their emotional palette is composed of different colors, weighted differently, organized around different pivots. The dominant emotions for many high Dark Triad individuals are pride, contempt, boredom, and thrill. Pride at their own perceived superiority, contempt for those they consider beneath them, boredom with situations that do not offer strategic engagement, and thrill, the sharp, electric pleasure of successful maneuvering. That thrill is one of the most under-discussed aspects of the Dark Triad inner experience. Because for many of them, life is a game that they are winning. And winning feels good, very good. Better, in fact, than most healthy pleasures feel to healthy people. The moment they successfully manipulate a difficult target, close a strategic deal, outmaneuver a rival, or extract exactly what they wanted from a situation while appearing generous, a specific chemical cascade fires in their brain. Reward, validation, triumph. This cascade is one of the reasons the pattern of behavior sustains itself. It is genuinely rewarding to them, not stressful, not effortful, rewarding. They are not carrying a burden, they are enjoying themselves. This is difficult for outsiders to accept. We want to believe that people who cause harm must suffer for it internally, that there must be a cost, that somewhere in the quiet moments they must feel the weight of what they do. For many high Dark Triad individuals, this is not true. They sleep well, they do not brood, they do not lie awake replaying their manipulations with regret. Their internal world is often notably peaceful, sometimes more peaceful than the internal worlds of their targets. The absence of guilt is not experienced as an absence. It is experienced as clarity. The third thing you need to understand is the specific way they perceive other people. For most humans, other people are experienced as fellow subjects, fellow consciousnesses, fellow beings with inner worlds as vivid, as complex, and as real as our own. This is a philosophical assumption we make continuously without noticing it. When you look at a stranger on the street, you automatically assume that behind their eyes is an inner life, that they have hopes, fears, memories, and preferences, that their experience of the moment is as real to them as yours is to you. This automatic assumption is called intersubjectivity. It is the foundation of ordinary social morality. Because it is very difficult to knowingly harm someone whose inner life you experience as being just as real as your own. The Dark Triad mind experiences other people differently, not as objects exactly. They are not delusional. They know other people have thoughts. They can predict those thoughts with often striking accuracy. But the automatic assumption of full intersubjective reality is muted. Other people are perceived at some deep level as figures in a landscape, characters in a story where the Dark Triad person is the main character. This is not a decision. It is a perceptual default. When they harm someone, they do not experience it the way you would experience harming someone. They do not feel the reverberating sense of having violated another consciousness. The other person's suffering registers as information, sometimes useful, sometimes inconvenient, but not as the shocking moral event that harm registers as in an empathic mind. This is the perceptual root of what looks, from outside, like extraordinary cruelty. It is not always cruelty in the sense of enjoying harm. It is often something more disturbing, indifference. The suffering they cause simply does not have the emotional weight in their perception that it would have in yours. They are not thinking, I am hurting a real person and I do not care. They are thinking, if they think about it at all, this move produced the result I needed. The person they hurt is, in their inner perception, more like a piece on a chessboard than a fellow soul. Not because they explicitly believe this, because their perceptual apparatus does not automatically generate the full intersubjective vividness that would make the person's suffering feel real in the way it feels real to you. This is the deepest divide between them and the empathic majority. And it is why appeals to their better nature almost never work. There is no better nature waiting to be reached. There is simply a perceptual system that does not experience other people as fully alive in the way you do. You cannot appeal to what is not activated. Now, if you have made it this far, you are already understanding this from a perspective most people never reach. But the most important part of this video is coming next. Because I have shown you what it feels like from the inside, the sense of normalcy, the different emotional palette, the perceptual difference. But there is one more layer, and it is the layer that will change how you understand these individuals forever. Because underneath the confidence, underneath the manipulation, underneath the enjoyment of the game, there is something else. Something the Dark Triad personality almost never acknowledges. Something that may be entirely invisible to their own conscious awareness. But it is there, and it shapes everything. Let me show you what it is. The fourth thing you need to understand is the wound they cannot see. Nearly every high Dark Triad individual carries an early wound. We covered this in the video on origins. A childhood in which vulnerability was punished, unconditional love was absent, and the self was shaped around the vow, "Never again will I be helpless." The vow worked. That is why it survived into adulthood. It became the operating system. But the child who made the vow is still inside them. Buried under decades of performance, strategy, and success, but not gone. Still there, still frightened, still carrying the original conviction that if they were ever seen as they truly are, they would be destroyed. This buried child is the reason for a specific pattern that psychologists have observed in high Dark Triad individuals across their lifespans. They cannot tolerate genuine intimacy. They can perform intimacy beautifully. They can construct convincing simulations of vulnerability. They can share what appears to be deep personal disclosure. But real intimacy, the kind that requires actually being seen as they are, with no mask, activates a terror they cannot name. Because if the mask ever fully dropped, the buried child would be exposed. And the buried child, in their unconscious model of the world, is unlovable. Every relationship they enter, they leave before this happens. Not always dramatically, sometimes through a slow devaluation cycle, sometimes through provoking the other person into leaving, sometimes through simply losing interest and moving on. But the timing is rarely coincidental. It correlates with the moment the other person begins to see through the mask, begins to sense the child underneath, and moves toward the child with genuine love. That moment, for the Dark Triad mind, is unbearable. Not because they do not want the love, because they cannot believe the love is real, and if it is real, they cannot believe it will survive the discovery of who they actually are. So they leave, or they push the other person away, or they destroy the relationship before the moment of exposure can arrive. They tell themselves and everyone else that the other person was inadequate, that they were bored, that they needed something more. The truth is quieter and sadder. They were terrified, and they will never say this. They may not even know it, but the pattern will repeat across every significant relationship of their life, and they will never quite understand why they cannot stay. This is the loneliness beneath the game. It is real, it is profound, and it is almost entirely unconscious. Which is why, in the rare moments when it does surface, usually in late-night hours, or during a crisis, or after a substantial loss, the Dark Triad individual often reports feeling a specific emptiness they cannot explain. They have everything the game was supposed to give them: status, influence, attention, partners, success. And underneath it all sometimes, in a moment they will not admit to anyone, they feel like they have been playing the game for so long that they have forgotten why they started. This is the closest most Dark Triad individuals come to genuine self-awareness, and most of them turn away from it as quickly as it arises, because to sit with it would require confronting the child underneath, and the child, in their deepest fear, is still unlovable. So they take another move, play another round, charm another person, close another deal, and the emptiness recedes for a while, until the next quiet hour. Now let me tell you why this understanding matters. Because there is a temptation, when we describe these individuals, to see them purely as villains, predators, monsters walking among us. And this framing is emotionally satisfying, but it is strategically limited. Because if you understand them as monsters, you will keep expecting them to behave like monsters. You will look for cartoonish cruelty. You will look for obvious evil, and you will miss the ordinary, tragic, human reality of their behavior. They are not monsters. They are wounded children in adult bodies, wielding tremendous social skill in service of an unconscious defense strategy. This does not make what they do less harmful. Understanding them is not the same as excusing them. What they do to others is real. The damage is real. The victims deserve protection, validation, and support. But understanding them accurately gives you better predictive power. You know what will move them and what will not. You know why certain interventions fail. You know why appeals to conscience do not land. You know why their patterns repeat across relationships. You know why they rarely change even when they seem to want to. The child underneath is still convinced that dropping the mask means annihilation, and no amount of adult reasoning can override that childhood conviction. They are not choosing to remain who they are, exactly. They are held there by fear so old and so deep that most of them have never consciously encountered it. This is why real change, when it occurs in a Dark Triad individual, and it does occur, though rarely, usually requires years of specialized therapeutic work, and often occurs only after a shattering life event that breaks the defensive structure open in a way no ordinary intervention could. Bankruptcy, public humiliation, a serious illness, the death of a parent, a moment where the game they have been playing suddenly stops working, and there is nothing left to distract them from the child underneath. In these moments, some Dark Triad individuals begin, painfully, to change. Most do not. The defense structure rebuilds itself, sometimes stronger than before. But in the few who do, the change is often profound, because they have finally met the child, and the child, held with adult compassion, has finally begun to heal. This possibility exists. It is rare, but it exists. And it is worth naming because otherwise the picture would be too dark. Human beings are capable of transformation, even at levels of personality that seemed permanent. But the transformation requires conditions that most Dark Triad individuals will never encounter and would resist encountering even if they did. You cannot be the one who provides those conditions. You cannot heal them by loving them harder. You cannot rescue them through your own sacrifice. Their transformation, if it ever comes, will not come from you. It will come, if it comes at all, from a collision with reality so severe that the defense structure cannot survive it, and from a subsequent period of deep, unglamorous, humbling internal work. Your job is not to be the catalyst for that transformation. Your job is to protect yourself while it either happens or does not. Let me leave you with this. Standing inside their mind, briefly, allows you to see something that changes how you interpret every behavior you have witnessed. The love bombing at the beginning was not calculating cruelty. It was a well-practiced move in a game they have been playing since childhood, deployed by a person who genuinely believed the game was reality. The devaluation that followed was not personal hatred. It was the buried child sensing that you were beginning to see too much and moving to protect the mask before the exposure could arrive. The discard was not indifference to your suffering. It was the only way the defensive structure knew how to survive the threat of being fully known. The lack of remorse afterward was not chosen callousness. It was the perceptual system doing what it has always done, registering the outcome as strategic information rather than as moral event. None of this makes their behavior acceptable. None of it should be tolerated. None of it excuses the damage. But all of it explains with a strange clarity why appeals to their better nature failed, why they moved on so quickly, why they seemed to feel nothing about what they did to you. They did not feel nothing, but what they felt was so different from what you expected them to feel that it might as well have been nothing. Understanding this frees you from a specific torment that many survivors carry. The torment of trying to make sense of the incomprehensible. The torment of wondering why the person who once seemed to love you could act as though you never mattered. They did not act as though you never mattered because you did not matter. They acted as though you never mattered because their perceptual system does not automatically generate the full intersubjective vividness that would make your suffering feel real to them. You were real. Your feelings were real. Your love was real. They simply did not experience your reality the way you experience theirs. This is a tragedy, both for you and, in a stranger sense, for them, because they will move through their entire lives never knowing what it feels like to be fully met by another consciousness they experience as fully real. That is what they have traded, without knowing it, for the safety of the mask. You do not envy them this trade. Whatever pain you have experienced at their hands, you have retained access to something they will likely never touch. The ability to fully feel another person. The ability to be fully felt in return. The ability to love and be loved as one whole self meeting another whole self with no mask, no strategy, no performance. This is what you were built for. This is what they lost or never had, or buried so deep that they cannot find their way back to it. Whatever they took from you, they could never take this. And this is what will make the rest of your life more real, more full, and more meaningful than theirs, no matter how much status or attention or success they accumulate. They are playing a game. You are living a life. The difference is total. If this video changed the way you understand these individuals, hit the like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach the people who need this message most. Subscribe if you want more content that pulls back the curtain on the psychology of human behavior at its deepest levels. And in the comments below, I want to know, did this perspective change anything about how you interpret a dark triad person from your own past? What did you see differently? Your reflection could be exactly what someone else needed to read. In my next video, I'm going to reveal the specific patterns that emerge in the aftermath of dark triad relationships, the long-term psychological reshaping that survivors carry for years, why healing takes so much longer than most people expect, and the specific practices that accelerate genuine recovery, not surface recovery, but the deep restoration of the self that these relationships damage. You do not want to miss it. Until then, stay awake, stay aware. And remember, you were built for something they cannot access. Do not let anyone convince you otherwise. Your capacity to feel fully is not a weakness. It is the deepest form of wealth a human being can possess.